So this one is why Asia can't stop its men from giving up. And it's interesting because as we were kind of talking about the lady standards and what they have for men and how it could be a little bit extreme, to a degree, you also have to keep in mind that there are situations where men are starting to say, you know what, I don't even want to contribute to this anymore. What's even the point? I'm just gonna lean into my vices, video games, movies, anime, um, sports, gambling, all those kind of things that men tend to do. And it's gotten to a point where you can't necessarily blame the ladies, right? Because at the end of the day, they're seeing that there is still that encouragement of men to just say, you know what, like I'm not contributing to this, like I'm bailing. Like, what's even the purpose of moving forward, having a family if all I'm hearing in social media is that men ain't shit. There's nothing. It's not worth being in a relationship. Men aren't good, and they choose the bear over a man, and it gets to a point now where you're like, okay, well, if that's the case, I have enough things that can entertain me, without having to have a woman in my life, right? At least long term, and considering what it means to date, what it means to start a family, how much it costs, for men, it could be more of an equation where they're saying, you know what, I don't think I want to contribute to that financially. I think I just want to contribute to myself and worry about what I got going on financially rather than trying to actually build a family. Because what's the point? There's no point in that. So, we're going to get into this next video, why Asia can't stop its men from giving up.
In June 2024, a 29-year-old man collapsed in an internet cafe in Wenzhou, China. His body sat in the chair for 30 hours before anyone noticed. The other gamers around him kept playing. They didn't call anyone. 20 years earlier, in South Korea, a 28-year-old named Yi Song-sok had just lost his job. So he sat down in a PC bang, a Korean internet cafe, and played StarCraft for 50 consecutive hours until his heart gave out. And the other gamers kept playing around him too. 2 deaths in 2 countries, 20 years apart, and the exact same scene. China responded with the most aggressive gaming crackdown in history. South Korea and Japan tried their own versions, but all 3 failed.
I can't stop. I can't help myself.
Because every single one of them attacked the symptom and left the cause untouched. I'm John. I study East Asian societies, and I spent years in the gaming industry, working as a research manager at a major publisher. So I understand the sociology and psychology behind gaming addiction. 3 forces made this inevitable, and a third one is actively killing teenagers.
I mean, gaming is such a crazy platform because you get so much in gaming. You get the puzzle, critical thinking component, fast reaction times, plus the cinematic component where you can get more of a story mode based game, and you have the competitive part of gaming. So there's so many components to gaming that like ending up falling into gaming is not something that is surprising, honestly.
In the next few minutes, we'll break down what China and others tried, why a sociologist from 1938 predicted their failure better than anyone alive today, and what a Vietnam War heroin study reveals about the real cause of gaming addiction. So let's start with what China actually did. August 2021, Chinese state media publishes an editorial calling video games 精神鸦片, spiritual opium. And the historical weight of opium in China is not subtle. This is the government that remembers the Opium Wars, reaching for the most culturally loaded word in its entire vocabulary to describe kids playing Honor of Kings on their phones. The new rules landed fast. Minors could play 1 hour per day, Friday through Sunday only, 3 hours per week. Real name verification for every account, facial recognition spot checks at random intervals, and Tencent, which controls nearly half of China's gaming market, rolled out compliance systems within weeks. The old physical infrastructure of gaming was already dying on its own. More than 45,000 internet cafes closed between 2020 and 2024. Smartphones made them obsolete. COVID accelerated the decline, and the new ID regulations finished the job.
Well, I feel like if you just strip all of that media content so quickly, like people are going to have to try and find ways in order to get around this. Like, there's no way that stripping it this quickly and having this much of a crackdown doesn't lead to you wanting to not play a game. It's like stealing candy from like a kid, right? If it's Halloween and you take all their candy away and they can't eat it, like they're gonna try and find ways to get to that candy. Like, you can't just completely shut it down, right? I think you have to, encourage certain things to be done within society before you can start stripping away the media content, technology, and gaming.
The communal escape valve was shutting down. Gaming went private onto phones, into bedrooms and toilet cubicles, and behind closed doors. So Tencent reported that minors now accounted for just 1.5% of their total gaming revenue, and claimed minor playtime hit a record low compared to 2020. And a 2022 industry report claimed that 3 in 4 minors were gaming fewer than 3 hours a week. By
That's
every
pretty good,
official
though.
metric, the policy was working. But independent researchers found something very different. More than 3 in 4 minors were bypassing the real name verification system entirely, using parents' IDs, VPNs, or accounts on foreign platforms like Steam that Chinese regulators couldn't touch.
I don't know why I'm doing this.
And the work
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people that are like, when you were starting to make Facebook accounts, you saw a couple of definitely young people that were on Facebook that were like, how are you getting bypassed? The security measures. Like, listen, people are gonna find a way to get access to things that they're gonna want to get access to onto the internet, right? And whether it's going to be something that is beneficial for them or not. I mean, the thing is about the internet is that people want to be able to have the freedom to use it and do what they want to do and get the media content. But
Workarounds became their own industry. Police busted a facial recognition fraud ring selling access to adult gaming accounts. About 3,000 minors involved, worth roughly 12,000 USD in transactions. Teenagers were paying other people to pass the face scan for them, and both sides were performing. Tencent reported compliance because it gave them regulatory cover, and the gray market kept their active user accounts healthy. The government claimed success because the alternative was admitting that the world's largest surveillance apparatus couldn't stop teenagers from playing a mobile game. Both sides had the incentive to maintain the theater. And the kids who stopped gaming? They didn't go outside or study more. They migrated to short video platforms, which weren't covered by the gaming restrictions. And researchers flagged these platforms as potentially more harmful.
I was gonna say, because like that's even worse. Like, there's no way that you're going to go from being able to solve a complex issue and sit and do something for a long period of time, immerse yourself into a game and beat the puzzles, watch the story, and not have more of an attention span and be able to contribute more to society because you have the ability to problem solve, right, from gaming. You have the ability to pay attention, listen, and understand what's going on. Where a short form, media content only says so much in a minute, 2 minutes. Like, what do you gain out of that? And you're continuously scrolling through it on a regular basis. I mean, your brain is just going to be fried. Like, you're going to end up, and this is something that I had seen in a lot of the younger generation, is that I feel like there has definitely come a point to where you can't just sit and watch a movie, watch a show, and without it being something that's highly stimulating, or in short durations of times where you can continue to move on to the next thing, right? I do think people begin to get just completely distracted and are unable to detach from their phones when you encourage them. You take away one media platform that at least encouraged longer stability in um your mentality and your behavior, but then you now transition that into short form media, and people's attention spans can't even last longer than a minute or two. How does that benefit your society?
Than gaming itself, because short video is algorithmically designed to maximize passive consumption, not the active, skill-based engagement that gaming at least provides. Basically, you shut down one outlet and the demand finds another. And this wasn't even the only ban that China rolled out that year. They used the same exact logic on the $100 billion private tutoring industry and got the exact same result. I break down that story up here. But China had the heaviest hand. Korea and Japan tried something different. Yi Sung-sep's death in 2005 rewired South Korean politics and became the catalyst for a decade of gaming legislation that would prove just as futile as China's approach. In 2011, South Korea passed a Cinderella law banning online gaming for anyone under 16 between midnight and 6 a.m. It was supposed to be the responsible version of China's heavy hand, but in a democracy. Korea ran this experiment for 10 years, and their best sign of success was teenagers were able to sleep an extra 90 seconds per night. 10 years of legislation, enforcement infrastructure, compliance monitoring, and public debate for 1.5 minutes of additional sleep.
Well, I think like you have to start to realize like it gets to a point where like you have to be able to encourage the gaming, but then transition it into something that's actually beneficial for people, right? Like, you can encourage people to say like, hey, you can game and do those things, but look at gaming in a different light. Once you start putting gaming in a negative light, like people are going to want to do it a lot more, right? Rather than encouraging it and telling people, hey, this is something fun that you can do, chill, relax with your family and friends, and kind of build more of a community around it, and you demonize it, what ends up happening is people want to do it more, and it becomes more individual. And if you're loosening up the regulations, it's not necessarily, as you can see, going to change much for people because they're like, well, like, I mean, I'm just gonna do it and find a way to, play myself and find different alternatives route. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna stop doing it.
And the reason was because the law didn't cover mobile gaming. So similar to China, kids switched platforms from internet cafes to their phones, which they could use anywhere, anytime. South Korea abolished the Cinderella law in 2021 and shifted to parent-set limits and voluntary self-regulation.
Okay.
By 2022, regulators were still tracking consoles while mobile gaming ran completely unchecked across 700 million devices. And by 2024, internet cafe visits had dropped to just 7.4% of gamers. In other words, Korean gaming migrated to platforms regulators couldn't see.
But I think that's even worse. Like at least if you had, the gamers in a community, they were at least like around each other. Now I know that you can say that someone was sitting there playing for 50 hours and no one even checked on the guy and he ended up dying. But like I do think that there is still the potential for people to build a community around gaming, around those environments and being in those situations because like at least you're outside and you're in that space rather than it being like, okay, like I'm in my room, I'm laying in my bed, just playing on my mobile phone wherever I want to play, and I don't have to leave the comfort of my home. Like, what's the purpose of me even doing that? Right? And now you just completely strip the community aspect and people are still gaming. Like, what? What?
Japan represents another approach entirely. In 2020, Kagawa Prefecture passed Japan's first gaming ordinance, 60 minutes per day on weekdays, 90 minutes per day on weekend for minors. But the ordinance is non-binding. No penalties, no enforcement, no compliance data. When a citizen challenged it in court, the judge dismissed the case because the law doesn't actually compel anything. It's the legal equivalent of a please don't litter sign. And Japan has about 1.5 million hikikomori, mostly men in severe social withdrawal, many who game extensively. But the research is clear. Gaming doesn't cause hikikomori. Gaming is what people do during withdrawal. It's a parallel response to the same societal conditions, and I talk a lot about it in this video here. So 3 countries with 3 approaches spanning the full spectrum from maximum state power to basically a suggestion. And all 3 produce the same outcome. The underlying problem persisted. The escape behavior adapted, and not a single government can point to measurable improvement in youth mental health. The kids aren't sleeping longer, they aren't studying more, they aren't happier. The only thing that changed is where they go to disappear. The irony is that the same government that labeled gaming spiritual opium also fund esports teams and hand their best gamers military exemptions.
Wait,
That's the
what?
contradiction that has an explanation, but it requires understanding what's actually driving the escape. I talk about the rise of gaming in East Asia here, so check it out if you're interested.
I mean, there's no way that like you're encouraging it and then banning it. So like, what? How are you gonna encourage me to do something and then you're gonna try and take it away and make it seem like it's something terrible? Like, what? How does that even make any sense at all? Like,
The bans failed because they targeted the valve. The pressure comes from somewhere else completely.
this is a great video, by the way. You guys
The
definitely
gaming
should go
ban
like.
and tutoring ban are companion policies. The same government, the same year, the same logic. You ban tutoring to ease academic burden. You ban gaming to protect mental health. Both assume the behavior is the problem, and neither touches the system that produces the behavior, the Gaokao, China's national college entrance exam. Over 13 million students take the Gaokao every year. That's roughly the entire population of Pennsylvania sitting in one test. In the top 39
Sheesh.
universities, the 985 tier, which is the gateway to any meaningful career mobility, admit under 2%. Picture a school of 1,500 students. Roughly 30 make it. That's one kid per classroom, if you're lucky.
What?
And every student sitting in the room knows the odds before they turn 15.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
And this is where a framework from 1938 does its heaviest work. Sociologist Robert Merton asked a question that explains gaming in East Asia better than anything written since. What happens when a society promises everyone they can succeed, but blocks most people from actually succeeding? He called
Well, that's what it is. Like, you just completely begin to lose incentives. Like, and this is something that I've harped on for the longest amount of time is that people definitely move on incentives. And now he may say something slightly different, but I do believe that if you remove the incentive for people to want to, be successful and build relationships and go outside and not be individuals and worry about themselves, you need to give them incentives to say like this is the benefit of you doing that, right? And if I'm trying to put myself in a situation to get to that benefit, but you're blocking me and you're only allowing certain people to get to that point. It's like what is even the point? I might as well just focus on myself and just live my life day by day and just succumb to the vices of what, video games, right? Or social media, scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, all of these things and then just worrying about myself, making sure I eat rather than worrying about anybody else. Like,
it strain theory. You study 16 hours a day for an exam that admits fewer than 1 in 50. Anything below that, and you're likely stuck with a mediocre job for the rest of your life. That gap between promise and reality is where gaming lives. Merton predicted 5 responses, and 3 of them are playing out in this video. Innovation, retreatism, and rebellion. We covered innovation already. That's how kids use a parent's ID or how fraud rings sell face scans. They accepted
figure
the
it
goal,
out.
but rejected the rules.
You just figure it
Retreatism
out.
is the one 3 governments have spent 2 decades trying to ban. You give up on the goal and the approved path to get there. You withdraw into a parallel world where different rules apply.
Right.
Gaming is that parallel world. And Merton would have predicted something else, that the same gap would produce 2 completely different responses, and the government will treat them in 2 completely different ways. In China, lying flat is Merton's rebellion. It started in 2021 when a factory worker posted a manifesto online. He quit his job and lived cheaply, and declared he'd rather lie down than grind for a system that wasn't going to reward him anyway. The post went viral. Millions of young Chinese adopted the label, refusing overtime, marriage, grinding for apartments that they couldn't afford, and competing in a race with no finish line.
Well, and that's the overall point is that like there's no incentives left for these young people to say like, yeah, like I want to be in a relationship. I want to, build my community. I want to do things in society because like I don't even have the chance to be successful anyways. Like that's the overall mindset and they're seeing that their freedoms and their abilities to do so is getting stripped more and more away, so I might as well set myself up to be living a standard where I just check out and then everybody could just figure it out themselves.
The government scrubbed the forums, censored the hashtags, and banned lying flat merchandise. But the sentiment just moved underground. Lying flat is public refusal, gaming addiction is private retreat, and the government treats them very differently. Lying flat gets censored, gaming gets banned. Even though merchant will tell you their responses to the same gap between promise and reality. And the kids hiding PC sessions during 12 to 16-hour study days tend to describe the same logic. Gaming is the only domain where effort actually produces results. The sentiment shows up across forums, clinical interviews, and academic literature on coping-motivated gaming. That's the retreatism mechanism in real time.
I can see that, where like you just playing games and like you're at least getting, you're leveling up, you're higher up in rank, you're actually getting good at the game. Every time that you play, you end up getting better, learning the game, and you actually have, pros and cons and benefits to it. And there still is a community aspect to it as well. Why contribute to society when I can still contribute with a certain amount of money in my pocket and, get the most out of, what I need in life, right?
And counselors working in China's remaining internet addiction treatment centers consistently describe the same profile among the teenagers they treat: a sense of emptiness, an inability to meet parental expectations, and a retreat into the only environment that responds to effort with reward. You could write that same clinical description for a teenager in Seoul or Osaka without changing a word. Because the strain isn't uniquely Chinese. South Korea's Suno compressed lifetime outcomes into a single exam. Japan's university entrance exam does the same. And in both countries, the promise that's supposed to justify the suffering, elite universities, stable career, secure life, broke a generation ago.
那前一个晚上，我清楚的记得，其实我就是紧张到就是那种睡觉的时候。
The exam still demands everything, but the reward no longer delivers. Durkheim called that state anomie, when the old rules stop working, but nobody's written the new ones yet. And the human cost of that anomie.
Yeah, when you start to lose the illusion, or it starts to lose what it actually was, the value of the society and the system that it was built around, it starts to lose that contributing factor. It ends up becoming a situation where people are like, I don't want to contribute to this because this is not giving me the value and the benefit that it gave those in the past. Right. And I think this plays a factor in how, I do believe mainly men as well, since generally it is a outlet that men tend to cater to. But when you strip it, when you are encouraged to retreat to it, it starts to get to a point where society loses its core structure and you're going to start to become extinct, right? I know that currently the Asian population has been declining steadily or actually rapidly because of the inability for them to encourage relationships, encourage people to be in these situations long term because of the fact that, they don't have the incentives and the success rate that their parents, their grandparents had. And men are going to start retreating definitely a lot more to those spaces. And women are going to start to retreat probably more towards the social media, the short form content, video creation. And it creates that individual mindset. And I think, for those of us that are in the West, when you see these kind of situations happening, across the world, we can kind of start to say, okay, like if we're going to see this situation here, how do we avoid it in the West, right? And we have to continue to create the incentives for both sides to where both parties feel as though they're actually benefiting in a relationship, in contributing to the society and their communities, and you're able to actually make a change and impact in those communities for your future relationships, for your future children, and the family that you hope to create, right? And you're able to at least reach a certain level of success that you can be satisfied with. I think that's what most people are trying to look for, and that is probably the end goal for most people. At least if I'm satisfied to where I can feel comfortable in what I've accomplished and been able to potentially get a home or uh, have a family and create that next generation without having too much stress and debt, which is where the materialism and individuality comes in. um that's what people are trying to look for long term. And if society doesn't start changing from that materialistic mindset and worrying about themselves as individuals, more and more of society is going to start to give up, quit, and retreat to those material things and those potential vices. So, but listen, I love gaming, and I will not say that it is gaming's fault at the end of the day. I think it's just the incentives that are surrounding our society currently.